So chapter 15 is our absolute last chapter in Gen Chem 2. And part of the reason we moved it to the end is because we're learning how to draw organic structures and think about functional groups and their reactivity. And it's probably best to have that just leading into organic chemistry rather than kind of at the beginning of Gen Chem 2. So again, 5 skills from this chapter. The first skill really just deals with making sure that everybody's very good at drawing Lewis structures, which is something we learned in chapter 10 back in Gen Chem 1. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but it is an important skill because we build on that in this chapter. The last skill we're actually not going to talk about just because we've run out of time, and that's thinking about all of these concepts in the application of biological molecules. So you might get to some of that inorganic chemistry, or certainly if you take a biochemistry course, you'll cover that. So the 3 main skills that we are going to talk about in the 2 days that we'll talk about for chapter 15 are learning how to draw organic molecules and thinking about what an organic molecule is. And as we talked about in class, organic molecules are really just molecules that are carbon-based, but we want to be very specific and not include things like carbonate or cyanide or things like that that are really inorganic. So it's largely carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen atoms that we're going to see in the molecules that we'll draw. So we're going to learn how to draw those, and importantly, we're going to learn how to draw them as skeletal structures. So this is kind of a shorthand notation for how we draw things, and again, an important concept to allow us to draw molecules quickly, because as we get molecules that are larger in size, or if we want to do repeated drawings of the same molecule, it's going to be important that we're kind of efficient in that process. So learning how to draw those, we'll spend a whole day on that. The second class period, we'll talk about functional groups. And so functional groups are groups of atoms that behave similarly in a chemical reactivity standpoint. So that's kind of the third skill, is thinking about the chemical reactivity of organic molecules. But we need to learn about and learn how to identify and name these different functional groups. So again, functional groups are important because they are the kind of chemical reactivity center of molecules. And so we want to learn how to recognize the about 15 different functional groups that we have in organic molecules. And then the last skill is learning to think about how these functional groups react. So absolutely no math in this chapter. So for those of you who have not appreciated the math in general chemistry, there's no math at all with this chapter. It's learning how to draw structures, think about the important functional groups that are present in them, and then think about how that dictates their reactivity. So pretty fun chapter and a great preview for what you'll encounter in organic chemistry.